Hello, welcome to our fourth video in the Through My Bible series. And as we look forward to week 4, I just want to start with one word of encouragement. We do have a long ways to go, of course. We are only in January, and this is going to take all year to get through the entire Bible, but you have already invested a fair amount of time, and you've made Bible reading a part of your weekly habit. And so you're going to make it. You are going to get there. You are going to, along with everyone else in our congregation who's participating, get through the entire Bible this year in 2022. And so may God continue to bless you as you do so. As we review what we went through in week 3, I had asked you to ask 2 questions of yourself as you were going through the Genesis readings and the Mark readings. Especially in regard to the Genesis readings, I asked you to think of this question: how could God call people like these his people? You read some stories that were familiar to you and some stories that we don't spend a whole lot of time on because they are so amazingly distasteful. In Genesis 34, you read about Simeon and Levi tricking and then massacring the Shechemites, and Jacob doing very little, really, seemingly to discipline them. They're mass murderers. There's nothing else that you can say. Of course, you're familiar with you were already familiar with the brothers of Joseph selling him into slavery, and the evil jealousy that arose in their hearts because of Jacob's favoring Joseph. But immediately after Joseph is sold into slavery, then you have the very ugly incident of Judah impregnating his own daughter-in-law, Tamar. And again, you ask, how can God call people like these his people? Well, the answer is very simple: only by his grace, because God presents us the very negative aspects of his people so that we can remember it is only by grace that he calls anyone to be his people. And that's a great comfort for us, of course, when we think of our many flaws, the flaws that people see and the flaws that we only know ourselves in our own thoughts. God calls us by his grace to be his people. Then regarding the Gospel of Mark, when you read chapters 11 through 15 in the Gospel of Mark, and you came to Jesus' passion, I asked you to consider the question, why would Jesus be willing to die for these people? It wasn't even the heathen Romans who engineered Jesus' arrest and death. It was the religious leaders of the time, the so-called good people. Jesus was persecuted and then finally murdered by the religious leaders. Why would Jesus be willing to offer his life for them? And Jesus' own disciples, the men who had spent 3 years with Jesus and supposedly loved him and on the way to Gethsemane swore their loyalty to him, his own disciples left him alone in his deepest distress. Why would Jesus be willing to pay such a price for them? Again, the answer is only because of God's grace. And even in the very ugly incidences of sin that we have recounted for us in the Bible, certainly not the last time we're going to encounter that in our Bible readings this year, God's grace is highlighted. God still calls the family of Jacob to be his people. God was still willing to sacrifice his son Jesus for these people. God loves us and calls us to be his people. Now, as we go through the readings that are coming up for this coming week, we're going to see at the end of Genesis, Joseph highlighted as the central figure. And I'd ask you to think about the various pictures that we have of Jesus himself in the person and work of Joseph. Joseph is a really singular figure in that we have so much written about him in the book of Genesis, and yet we can't really say anything negative about him because we have only his many positive attributes highlighted for us. But beyond being positive attributes, let's see them also as previews of Jesus himself. And also when it comes to reading the last chapter of the Gospel of St. Mark and then getting into the first 4 chapters of Paul's letter to the Galatians, let's see what a difference the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus means for our everyday lives, especially how we now view God's law differently. That's going to be highlighted, especially in the Galatians readings, but then to build or to lead up to those words of the Apostle Paul, we have the actual account of Easter then in Mark chapter 16. So God's blessings to you on your readings this week, and we'll look forward to presenting you with our next video next week, and also getting together at the parsonage for a discussion on the last Saturday of January as well. Thank you.